Kimi K3 scored 88.3 on terminal bench, while Claude Code's best model hit 84.6, and Kimi costs $5 less per month. That gap is real, and it's just the start of what I found comparing these two. Both tools dropped major updates recently, so the timing actually matters here, and I'm comparing Kimi K3 versus Claude Code across 5 real tests: coding benchmarks, collaboration, API speed, pricing, and context window. With 18 verified sources, no vendor money, no spin. And honestly, the one number that could flip your decision completely is the dynamic task failure rate. Because if your workflow throws unpredictable edge cases at your coding agent, the winner on paper might actually be the wrong choice for you. All right, so who is this actually for? If you're a solo dev or a small team picking a coding agent right now, this comparison is for you because wrong pick means paying more for a tool that breaks on your actual workload or leaving a cheaper, faster option on the table because you didn't look close enough at the numbers. Test 1, code generation and debugging. And the failure mode here is pretty specific. Your agent writes code that looks right, passes a simple prompt, and then falls apart the moment a real repo throws something unexpected at it. So you spend an hour debugging the AI's output instead of shipping. What surprised me was how clean the structured results were. 88.3 on terminal bench versus 84.6 for Claude's Fable 5 model, and 42.0 versus 35.0 on SWE Marathon. But Claude's Opus 4.8 posted just an 8% dynamic failure rate, while Kimi's was 36%. And that caveat is real. Kimi K3 takes test 1. I was expecting the dynamic failure gap to cancel out Kimi's structured benchmark lead, but on the scoreable head-to-head numbers, Kimi wins by a clear margin, and the structured scores are what we can actually compare directly. So that puts Kimi K3 up 1-0. Test 2, real-time collaboration. And the failure mode is pretty specific. You're mid-session, you need to hand off context to a teammate or switch devices, your tool drops the thread, there's no sync, no shared session, nothing. And you rebuild from scratch. Honestly, this one was pretty one-sided. Kimi K3 has real-time group chat with AI agents through its multi-claw feature, plus cross-device sync across phone, computer, and web. While Claude did add multiplayer editing recently, which is genuinely useful, but it's locked to team and enterprise plans, so most solo devs won't touch it. Kimi K3 takes test 2 as well. I was expecting Claude's multiplayer editing to make this close, but it's behind a paywall that most individual developers won't hit. And Kimi's group chat and cross-device sync are available out of the box. So that's a meaningful difference day to day, and it makes it 2-0 Kimi K3. Test 3, API integration and speed. And the concrete problem is migration cost, because if you've already got an OpenAI compatible pipeline and you have to rewrite your integration layer just to plug in a new model, that's hours of engineering time you're not getting back. And if the model is slow, your whole pipeline slows down with it. So I want to be upfront about the limits here. Kimi K3's API is OpenAI compatible, which is a real advantage for anyone already using OpenAI SDKs. And speed-wise, Kimi clocks 33.3 tokens per second on its own infrastructure and up to 165.1 on Fireworks, but Claude Code, no published speed figure at all, which is honestly a black box. Kimi K3 wins test 3. I was expecting this to be a tie since speed data was missing for Claude, but the OpenAI compatibility alone is a concrete verifiable advantage Claude just doesn't match. And when one side has published numbers and the other has none, you go with the one you can actually plan around. So that's 3-0 Kimi K3. Test 4, pricing and cost efficiency. And opaque pricing is its own kind of tax, because if you can't see the per token rate before you commit, you're basically pulling a lever on a slot machine every month. And for teams, Claude Code can run $150 to $250 per developer per month, which adds up fast. Pretty clear what I found. Kimi K3 starts at $15 a month for consumers versus Claude Code at $20. Kimi publishes flat API rates at $3 per million input tokens and $15 per million output tokens across the full 1 million context window. But Claude's per token API pricing isn't disclosed publicly, which makes budgeting genuinely harder. Kimi K3 takes test 4. Honestly, I was expecting the pricing gap to be smaller, but Kimi wins on both the consumer plan and on transparency. And if you're trying to run unit economics on your project, $15 versus $20 with flat published API rates versus nothing matters a lot. So that's 4-0 Kimi K3. Test 5. Context window, and the failure mode that catches people off guard is this. You're mid-refactor on a large code base, and your agent just loses the thread because it ran out of context, starts hallucinating function names that don't exist, ignores files it already read, and that's not a hypothetical. So the situation here is lopsided in a weird way. Kimi K3 has a confirmed 1 million token context window, which is a standout number for large repos. But Claude Code's context window is just not publicly documented anywhere I could find. No published figure, no confirmed limit, and that's a real gap in the information. This one's a tie. I was expecting to hand Kimi a clean win here, but I can't score a test where one side has no published number to compare against, and calling Kimi's 1 million token window a win over an unknown just isn't honest. So we stay at 4-0, Kimi K3 with one tight test. Kimi K3 wins on structured coding benchmarks at 88.3 versus 84.6 on Terminal Bench and 42.0 versus 35.0 on StuffWe Marathon. Wins on real-time collaboration with group chat and cross-device sync built in. Wins on pricing at $15 a month with flat published API rates. And it has a confirmed 1 million token context window for large code bases. Claude Code wins on dynamic task reliability with just an 8% failure rate versus Kimi's 36% when things get unpredictable. Wins on multiplayer editing for teams on team and enterprise plans. And its autonomous agent debugging is genuinely strong because it reads files, runs shell commands, and iterates through diagnosis on its own without you babysitting it. Okay, so here's the honest call. I was expecting this to be closer, but Kimi K3 pulled ahead pretty consistently across the tests I could actually score. And that said, a 36% dynamic failure rate is not a small number. So if your workflow is predictable and you want a cheaper agent with a huge context window and real-time chat, go Kimi K3 at $15 a month. But if your code base throws messy edge cases and you need an agent that won't fall apart, Claude Code's 8% failure rate is worth the extra cost.